So, patch 2.1 dropped, and with it came new islands, fishing, puzzles, as well as a bunch of other events, and while those things are great fun, I was most hyped about the new character, aka the Raiden Shogun. As a preface to everything I say after this point, I just want to mention that this is all subjective and very much my opinion on the matter, so if you guys have differing opinions, let's all be civil about things when discussing this matter. Also, understand that there will be some spoilers in this video, so if you haven't played the Archon quest, then it is best that you come back when you have done so. Now, for those clicking this video, you're probably wondering how a character with so much controversy could be Genshin's perfect character, and truthfully speaking, one scroll through the Raiden subreddit would easily portray the displeasure that many players have against Raiden. However, as time progressed and people have gotten more familiar with their kit, as well as testing out new synergies, the writing seems to have turned to acceptance. So with almost 3 weeks worth of hindsight, I want to break down what makes the Raiden Shogun potentially Mihoyo's perfect character, starting with even before release, the hype that was building up around the Raiden Shogun was immense, and Mihoyo knew that she was definitely going to be an absolute banger, and her pre-2.1 trailer appearances showed it. From the first teaser in the 2.0 livestream to her character demo days before release, I think it's safe to say that she definitely has been under the spotlight by the majority of Genshin community. To really capitalize on all this attention, Mihoyo seems to have kicked it into high gear when creating the Raiden Shogun's trailer. From animations to the music, the trailer was literally almost like a flex from the people working on it. I don't think it would be unfair to say that Mihoyo really killed it by how they presented her to the community. Stepping into the game itself, when it comes to her actual character design, it's safe to say that Mihoyo also knocked it out of the park. From a story standpoint, she's written as this powerful, no bullshit character that if something needs to get done, she will stop at nothing to achieve it. Yet, as if you were playing Persona 5, you go into her palace, or the plane of Euthymia, as the game calls it, you beat her up, which by the way has absolute killer music during the fight, and then she gets a change of heart and overturns the Vision Hunt decree. I know that some people feel that the Archon quest feels a bit rushed, and I can understand the sentiment, but I think that is more attributed to many of the other factors as opposed to just the Raiden Shogun alone, so I'll leave it out of this discussion, especially since most of the parts with the Shogun in it, she actually is really cool. Now it's important that we go back to this idea of change of heart, because when you first unlock her, she's this cold-hearted, ruthless killer that simply has one goal: seize all the visions. And this might have been a turnoff for some, but once you get to know the real version of the Shogun, aka, you come to realize that she has her quirks, and makes her much more likable. Now I know some of you guys might like that step on me energy she gives off, but I kinda like that she has this more easygoing side, so long as you don't piss her off. Mihoyo has done a great job in reflecting this duality by implementing voice lines with tonal shifts for both the Shogun version of her and A herself.
Listen to the foolish question. There are only two kinds of foods. Those that must be consumed to nourish the body, and those that harm it. Don't listen to the Shogun. Desserts. Cavities are no big deal. You can just replace your teeth. Anyway, I just don't see how desserts can pose a serious obstacle to my pursuit of eternity.
What is more intriguing is that by completing the Archon hangout quest and leveling up her friendship, you get to learn more about A, and that makes leveling up her friendship that much more rewarding. Now I know that every character has voice lines unlocked behind friendship levels, but A is more special as you really get to see the two versions of her in her voice lines, and it's rather interesting to actually decipher which one is the Shogun and which one is actually her. My favorite line is when she goes,
Time for dessert. What? Why not? What do you mean entrees come first? They were only indulging me because I am the Shogun? Huh. Interesting.
This discrepancy between her and the Shogun makes it different from the other characters, and overall just a part of her design I really enjoy. And of course, you know, to run it off, she is very pretty. From a design standpoint, and I'm aware that this is subjective, but I'm confident in saying that in most players' cases, they probably won't complain about her aesthetics. So then let's actually talk about something people is actually complaining about, which is her Before we mention what people are writing about when it comes to the Raiden Shogun, I do want to give a bit of a background as to some positives about her combat gameplay. I am for the most part a light spender, and I buy Woken as well as Battle Pass whenever I need it, but for the most part I don't really wail, well, until the Raiden Shogun, meaning that I don't necessarily have a massive cast to work with. Started playing Genshin around June, and since then I mainly relied on Ningguang and Bennett to carry me through the content. Sure, along the way I played a little bit of Lisa, Barbara, Yenfei, and each of these I ended up dropping simply because it's just my luck that I pull a ton of Catalyst users, and surprise, they all feel a little bit too similar. While I did use Xiangling to carry me through the Abyss, she was not someone that I really enjoyed playing in the overworld, so coming from this background, I just really needed someone new to play, someone different, and when the Shogun arrived, my wishes were answered. I know that in the test runs, they make the character pretty OP with some pretty weak enemies, but just playstyle wise, I knew straight away that she was going to be someone very enjoyable for me to play. For example, the fact that her E makes every coordinated hit look as if you're ripping into some electro dimension makes each attack feel like it has weight, and it sounds like it's weight too. And speaking of ripping dimensions, her ult literally slashes dimensions into her enemies, and honestly, in my humble opinion, she is easily one of the most stylish ult animations out of anyone in the game. So as far as her face value combat gameplay goes, I think it's safe to say that Mihoyo still really outdid themselves here, but there is a glaring issue with her, or issues, where I believe most people in the community would take problem with her, and it is within her interactions with other characters. And no, I'm not saying she doesn't hit hard or she's not good at her job, which by the way is being an AoE battery, and she actually does that quite well. Contrary to what Mihoyo wants you to believe, parts of her kit seems to be not working as optimal, starting with the first and by far the biggest part of her outrage is definitely behind the Beidou ult interaction. Beidou's ult not proccing during A's ult seems very counterintuitive, and with Electro being as weak as it is, each of these potential combos being closed off really hurts a character's viability. Understands that she works with Xing Cho, and with, for some reason, through convoluted wording that I am too lazy to go over, since any other video on Raiden out there could probably explain it better than I can, they just won't seem to let this interaction play out. And it's not like this interaction would suddenly make Ball this Ganyu tier DPS. If anything, she could finally bring some much needed firepower in the Electro Element. This debacle is a real shame, as before the Shogun came out, I was actually beginning to raise Beidou simply because of the fact that I just like her character design and thought Electro with Electro, hell, what could go wrong, right? But in hindsight, if this doesn't get fixed, I'm almost glad that I got sidetracked with farming for Ball's artifacts rather than raising Beidou. This isn't a shot at Beidou, by the way, rather how things are worse for people who recently raised Beidou to cash out on the theoretical synergy between these two characters, only to essentially be spat in the face by Mihoyo. It just seems weird to me that an Electro Archon can't seem to work with people of her own element, and while there's no rule that an Archon has to completely synergize with everyone in their own element perfectly, the fact that she can work with other characters using the same attack proc of a different element, might I add, it just doesn't make sense. This interaction feels like something that can be easily adjusted by the devs, yet they simply just say,
No, I don't think I will.
In addition, there is something else that does bother me, and while I think the Beidou synergy is far more prominent issue, I do feel the next biggest issue probably has to do with her. Now personally, I am a person that scours the leaks subreddit for fun and mainly to know what banner is coming up, but within the leaks her skill actually had worked on shields. And honestly, I don't know why they decided to take this away. Personally, I see no reason as to how this particular interaction would make her unbalanced. I know that at the end of the day, bringing someone on her team to break the shields necessary is probably the easy fix, but man, does it feel bad when she's actually useless against shields unless she pops her ult. It just doesn't feel good, and it's not as if her E is hitting like a truck or anything to begin with, so unless if I have missed something, I really don't think Mihoyo is going to break their game by letting her E proc on shields. Again, I don't know man, just seems like more boneheaded character balancing in my opinion. So These two are the main issues that I would take the most gripes with. There is one more issue though, that lots of people seem to have really taken a big gripe towards, and that being her. So I'm just going to say this right off the bat. I think Constellation Zero Ball is perfectly fine, aside from the aforementioned issues earlier, and like the rest of the characters in the game, she's just enhanced when you get dupes. Take it from me, as someone that got her to C2, she doesn't really need the extra DPS. If anything, her C2 turns her from the sub DPS to practically the only DPS that you need. Before you raise your pitchforks and try to cancel me, understand that I am not against a buff. I'm a Raiden main and I adore any sorts of buffs, but I can't say wholeheartedly that the Shogun is bad at C0 because she really isn't. She's not Ganyu levels of sub DPS, but really her kit serves more purpose than that. Her battery ability allowed my national team to absolutely crush the Abyss faster than ever before, and in the overworld she kills anything and everything. However, while I don't agree with her C0 being bad, with so many people unhappy about the Shogun at C0, I feel that it would just be unfair to ignore him. I personally think that a good middle ground would be to fix Raiden's interactions with Beidou's ult and shields. She doesn't need buffs in the sense of just cranking up her number. Rather, she needs those interactions to work to give her more flexibility with team comps. Some argue that Mihoyo locked her peak potential behind Constellations, but again, I'd argue that every character is that way, and hell, Bennett's C1 is literally night and day for him. Ningguang's wall reset gives her an insane DPS burst, and Xiangling at C4 lets her deal damage for practically an eternity. But regardless of how you feel about Raiden's C2 or Constellation in general, it would be naive to say that Mihoyo is baiting specifically for her C2, as they've been doing this for many characters and for pretty much as long as the game's existence. Not defending the action here per se, rather just to point out that this has been part of the game for so long, and if anything, people should have been more avid about it sooner. But I guess at the end of the day, it just comes down to how you perceive her at C0. If you think she's fine, you wouldn't think that she's locked behind Constellations, and if you're in the other camp, then you would think, of course, that she's locked behind Constellations. While viability at C0 is controversial for many players, she does open up the conversation to a topic people seem to have agreed on since Dawn of Genshin, that being the... It is without surprise that this complaint has once again been put into the hot seat, and I get that this issue is not just specific to the Electro Archon, but she is in this group, therefore must be mentioned. I'm sure that Electro has definitely been overshadowed by its fellow elements, and while there seems to be almost a reluctant acceptance for the fact that Electro is probably never getting a buff, because let's face it, Inazuma, the region of Electro, is out, and Mihoyo still doesn't buff it. I think at this point, you probably shouldn't hold your breath. But I think due to the fact that the Raiden Shogun is such a popular character, upon arrival, she has once again brought with her the spotlight on Electro, and perhaps most importantly sparked debate again with perhaps a new group of people, leading to maybe a second wave of Electro buff wanters. I don't know. I still think Mihoyo will probably continue to ignore these voices since they just seem to lack communication in general. One can hope that perhaps a second wave could lead to some changes. It's just a shame that some of the fattest numbers from other elements mainly come from reactions. Vaporize and Melt just breed insane numbers, yet Electro's over here twiddling her thumbs wondering what they do besides buffing physical damage users, which, by the way, is not in the most amazing spot as of right now, or sending overloaded opponents across the map while you're trying to get within melee range to hit them. Maybe, I don't know, Dendro will fix them? It really is a bit of a shame. The Shogun is easily Mihoyo's most successful character to date, and sure, one could argue that her banner was the perfect storm, with crystal top-ups, a stacked 4-star lineup, her being an Archon, but realize that people would only spend their top-up on characters that they want, and if anything, it would seem lots of people want Raiden. The effort that Mihoyo has put in to really propel her to sell from being the last character to leave a lasting impression in the 2.0 trailer, taking up the most space in the 2.1 splash art, having a character demo that is leagues ahead of anything besides maybe the Dolny demo, it's clear Mihoyo put everything into marketing this character, and to a great extent, everything that was shown was mostly delivered. We got a powerful Electro Archon, that was flashy and, more importantly, fun to play. But sadly, when it came out to working out the kinks of her kit, for the most part, it does reflect her power and element well. It does, unfortunately, also miss a couple crucial factors that really hinder the potential of the Shogun. With a set precedent of Zhongli being buffed, there is a shot, but honestly, maybe that's just too much hopium on my side. Regardless of fixes to her interactions with Beidou and Shield, I will still main her as she's just too great a character to pass up, and actually was the character that carried me through Abyss 12 for the first time. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the Raiden Shogun, Ball, Beelzebub, whatever it is you want to call her. She's a great character overall. From her idle animations, voice lines, combat animations, story and lore, she's absolutely something Mihoyo will be proud of, and from the looks of her sales, they are definitely proud of. It is just hard to overlook the hiccups in her kit. While I can see that Mihoyo is trying to create characters with different utility in mind for the future, their decisions with some of their interactions are really out of place, and seemingly the only reason for them to do this was because I said so. So is Ball Genshin's perfect character? She definitely is Mihoyo's perfect character, that's for sure. But as far as the player experience goes, no, she isn't the perfect character. And to be frank, I don't know if there ever will be a truly flawless character. But all I know is that the mistakes made with the Shogun are really easily avoidable, and if anything, there are numerous other glaring issues on top of this one that really begin to show the cracks in Mihoyo's game development. But that's a video for another day. That being said, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next one.